And so for the next 80 years, you have only 5 emperors, and they're often called the 5 good emperors. They're not related necessarily by blood. They sort of pick the best qualified guy, and they're all sound, competent, good emperors. And the 2nd century AD, from Nerva to Marcus Aurelius, is often regarded as the high point of the Roman Empire. And a lot of that comes from, you have political stability. You have a succession of decent guys being emperor who rule relatively wisely, promote good policies. There's other things working to Rome's advantage, but that's good. And then where it falls apart is where the last guy, Marcus Aurelius, looks around and says, who's the best qualified guy to succeed me? What a coincidence. It's my own dear son, who turns out to be a psycho. And then it all goes downhill.
And some people place the sort of the collapse of the Roman Empire there at the end of Marcus Aurelius' rule.
Yeah, so 180 AD is one common date for an early date for the end of the Roman Empire, because from then on it's a mixed bag of good and bad emperors.
At the very least, this period is when the Roman Empire is at its height on all different kinds of perspectives.
Certainly geographically, I mean, at this point stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, from Egypt up to Germany. Like I said, probably about 50 million people within its boundaries. Within those boundaries, there's relative peace. So, I mean, sometimes people talk about the Pax Romana. I mean, the Romans are fighting lots of people, but within the boundaries, you have relative peace. There's relative economic prosperity. I mean, nothing in the ancient world is that prosperous. It's just a different sort of economy, but it's pretty stable. There's no huge disasters happening yet. Some plagues start in Marcus Aurelius's reign. But yeah, this is pretty much seen as the high point of the Roman Empire, and I think it is. I think that there's truth to that.
Let me ask the ridiculously oversimplified question, but who do you think is the greatest Roman emperor? Or maybe your top 3.
Emperor? I tell you what, I'll tell you my favorite Roman who wasn't an emperor, and that's Marcus Agrippa, who was Augustus's right-hand man. So Agrippa's this interesting guy who is extremely talented. He's a terrific general. He's a terrific admiral. He's a great builder. He, is kind of like the troubleshooter for Augustus. He's the guy who wins the Battle of Actium for Augustus. So literally, Augustus would not have become the first emperor without Agrippa. When Augustus rebuilds the city of Rome, it's Agrippa that he gives the job to. Agrippa rebuilds the Campus Martius. He builds the first version of the Pantheon. He personally goes through the sewers to clean them out. And he just has this great set of qualities that he's very self-effacing. I think he likes power. He wants real power, but he realizes I don't have that kind of clever politician's ability to be the front guy. So I'll just serve my friend Augustus loyally. They were childhood friends. I'll win the battles for Augustus, and I'll let him take all the credit. But I'll be his number 2 guy. And that's what I'm good at. And he realizes his limitations. I mean, so many people don't. So many people are like, oh, I just want to keep, grabbing for more and more and more when it's not something they're good at. And I think Agrippa says, I'm good to this point and I'll play that role and no more. And that'll give me a lot of power, but I'm not going to press it. And he's just very hardworking. He's modest. He's self-effacing. He's highly competent.
I wonder how many people in history there are that are like the drivers, the COO of the whole operation that we don't really think about or don't talk about enough, to where sort of they're really the mastermind.
Or the ones who make something possible. I mean, even in this conversation today, you would not have Alexander the Great without his father, Philip II, having built that army and handed it to him on a silver platter. Octavian would never have become emperor without Agrippa. So they play central roles sometimes. But if I had to pick an emperor, I'd probably pick Augustus just because of his influence. And because I admire his the thing Agrippa didn't have, his political savvy, his manipulation of image and propaganda, all that I find very fascinating. Though I'm not sure he's a great human being, but he's a really interesting figure.
Whether he's good or bad, he was extremely influential on defining just the entirety of human history that followed.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most influential humans ever. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, if you ask in public who the most famous Roman emperor is? Would that be Marcus Aurelius potentially?
I don't know.
But he's
a good
up
question.
there, right?
He's real famous because he was a Stoic philosopher and he wrote this book, The Meditations.
I mean, it's just interesting. Stoicism had, as a philosophical ideology, had a role to play in during that time. I mean, there's the tragic fact that did Nero murder Seneca?
Yes. Well, he drove him to suicide, let's say.
There's a lot of interesting questions there, but one is like the role, especially when it's hereditary, the role of the mentor, like who advises who with Aristotle and Alexander the Great, like that dance of who influences and guides the person as they become and gain power is really interesting.
Well, I mean, one of the big questions with the Roman emperors, and we've been talking about some of them, is why did so many seem to be either crazy or just kind of sadists? And that's, I don't know that there's a good answer to that. I mean, people have theories, Caligula got a brain fever and changed after that or something. But I think there's a lot of maybe truth in the notion that the ones who seem to go craziest quite often are the ones who become emperor at a young age. Mm-hmm. And there is something about that old cliche that absolute power corrupts absolutely, especially if your own personality isn't really fully formed yet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think take anybody when they're a teenager. If you all of a sudden said, you have unlimited power, what would that do to you? How would that warp your personality? I mean, look at all what do they always have to say, like the Disney stars who sort of go wrong or something because they get rich and famous at this very young age.
Yeah, fame, power, and even money. If you get way too much of it at a young age, I think we're egotistical, narcissistic, all that kind of stuff as babies. And then when we clash with the world and we figure out the morality of the world, how to interact with others, that other people suffer in all kinds of ways, understand like the cruelty, the beauty of the world, the fact that other people suffer in different ways, the fact that other people are also human and have different perspectives, all of that, in order to develop that, you shouldn't be blocked off from the world, which power and money and fame can do.
And conversely, a lot of the emperors we regard as, quote, good emperors are the ones who become emperor at a, middle-aged or something, where their personalities are fully formed, where they're not going to really become different people. And so that works in that theory too. I mean, I don't think it's absolute. And of course, the greatest exception is Octavian Augustus, who, starts his rise to power as a teenager, but somehow doesn't seem to go nuts.
Yeah, history is
a lot. It's not an absolute, but it doesn't help to get that much power at a young age, I think.